Hi, it's Julia Rae, and this is A Deeper Look. I believe the most important stories are the ones deep within us. The stories that make us feel alone, yet connect us when we're brave enough to tell them. Tune in every Wednesday to dive into the deep end together. Hello, everyone. I am so excited to have the Paige Davis here, multi-hyphenate, super, super talented, and just one of my all-time favorite human beings. Thank you so much for being here, Paige.
I'm thrilled to be here. I mirror and echo that right back to you.
I fell in love with you on Trading Spaces, on TLC's Trading Spaces. Really, the home renovation show of all home renovation shows.
The mother of all home renovation shows.
So true.
In so many ways.
Yeah, it was the catalyst for what became a booming industry.
Yeah.
And you were the face of Trading Spaces. I mean, my mom and I just remember watching every Saturday night and just falling in love with you and wanting to know you. And lucky for me, I got to know you.
We met at an event.
Yes.
We did a Christmas tree lighting event at, was it Macy's?
Yes, in Philadelphia.
In Philadelphia. And, you know, that most people do know me from Trading Spaces. It's hilarious because it did launch an entire new genre of television for starters. Like that whole, you know, even though we were on TLC and not HGTV, it kind of launched HGTV in a way too. Even though it existed already, it's what gave that network its wings. And then it really launched an entire like DIY approach to, not that people weren't doing things for themselves to save money, but or because they loved it, but it really kind of like launched Home Depot and Lowe's in a way. Like, you know, people were going to these places and realizing they could do things in their home for not that much money and not that much time to make a real difference. But what's so funny about it is I have no background in interior design, absolutely zilch background or interest in DIY whatsoever. And to become the face attached with that show was a little like, I don't know what's the word, but I mean, it just seemed so odd to me because, you know, I was a dancer, singer, actress, and my whole life was I want to do Broadway. And suddenly I'm tearing off wallpaper and, you know, painting rooms and putting together IKEA furniture every day in like 100-degree heat in someone's back lawn. And I mean, like, what is happening right now? I like sweating, but I like sweating in a dance studio, not in the blazing sun in someone's lawn.
Yeah, I mean, I now know how gifted you are as a musical theater performer. But I didn't know that when I fell in love with you on Trading Spaces. Tell me how you ended up there and take me back to even before then. So you went to SMU.
I really was a gymnast when I was a little girl and discovered as I was, you know, moving my body, flying through space, that the thing I truly loved the most about gymnastics was all the connecting moves, all the in-between moves. Mm-hmm. It was the dancing that I truly enjoyed. And right around that same time, I was 13 years old, and I like quite literally discovered my mother's West Side Story album and started listening to it and playing all the characters down in the basement with my stuffed animals watching or whatever. And I just started realizing like, oh, this musical theater thing, this is something you really like. And with a suggestion of my librarian in high school, which I always found a little bit of a kismet thing because I'm so close to my Aunt Eileen, and she is a librarian. That's what she did as a career her whole life. And so that, I don't know, that just felt like kismet. The librarian had said, you know, there's a performing arts high school in Louisville, Kentucky, which is where I lived. And it's a public school. It's free. You just have to audition to get in. I'd never had any formal dance training of any kind. But I went for it. So I kind of got caught up with dance pretty fast, even though I didn't study dance as a kid. You know, I had 2 classes a day, every day in school. So I learned really fast. And then I majored in college at SMU in dance. That was my major. And did summer stock all through college, and then did some regional theater things. Took a detour to Los Angeles to be with a man who I cared about and loved very much, but wasn't right for me. And then ended up auditioning for the national tour of Beauty and the Beast. And that was really my first like big equity job. And once I landed that role, I never returned to LA. I mean, I did eventually for other jobs, but then suddenly I was in New York. But the way I got Trading Spaces was primarily because of a friend. I knew someone who was my neighbor in Los Angeles, and the trajectory of her career was talk shows. So she worked for Sally Jessy Raphael. She worked for Ricki Lake. She eventually worked at Oprah. And she also worked at Banyan Productions in Philadelphia.
Oh, wow.
And it was Banyan that produced Trading Spaces. So she was the one who knew they were looking for a host. And so, although she did not work on Trading Spaces, she worked on A Wedding Story, A Makeover Story, Dating Story. Some of you may remember back to Daytime on TLC. She heard the water cooler talk about needing a new host. And she called screaming into my answering machines, and said, oh my God, there's a show, and it's called Trading Spaces, and they need a new host, and you're perfect for it. And I called her back, and I'm like, I've never done TV. I've never hosted anything, and I don't have a background in interior design. So how exactly am I perfect for this show? And she said, I just know it.
Wow.
And so she was kind of working behind the scenes like, hey, I really want to get my friend in for this audition. And the executive producer was like, oh, great, your friend. Yeah. Awesome. Just like not taking her seriously at all. And she didn't work on the show either. So she had just very little pull, but she just would not let up. She just would not let up. And she said, would it help if her agent called? And the executive producer, her name's Denise. She has since passed on, God bless her. But she said she has an agent? She's like, yes, she has. She's in the business. She's just not my friend. And so she's like, I don't know, whatever. So anyway, she just kept pushing me to push. So my agent called. And then still nothing. And I'm like, okay, now I'm getting offended.
Right.
Like, this is crazy. I'm not auditioning. I know I don't have television experience on my resume, but I'm not auditioning for NBC's fall lineup here. Like, right. If I can't audition for TLC, how will I ever get? Because TLC was so brand new back then.
Yeah.
I'm like, if I can't audition for TV, how will I get TV experience? So I actually ended up calling... Why I called her, I don't know. Her name was Jana Bennett. She was the general manager of TLC. For some reason, I had her contact information. I guess I'd been passed on. And I left a voicemail message for her saying, hi, this is me, and I understand that my resume doesn't reflect television experience, but, I have been in the business at that time, 17 years. And I said, I really believe that my training in improv and my background in theater is really ideally suited to what I understand is an unscripted show. Like, reality television wasn't really around like it is now. I said, I'd just like a chance to be seen. And then I got a call from my agent who said, I don't know what's happened, but they said, you can come down to Philadelphia. They'll see you on the audition day at the end if there's time.
Wow.
And I went down and I sat there all day, and I was the last one to be seen.
Wow.
And then I never thought I'd get it. I just thought it wouldn't be like pulling teeth the next time I wanted to audition for something
right
at TLC. But
wow.
And then it's another long story how I actually booked it, because it wasn't a shoe-in that day. But eventually I did actually book it.
Well, I'd love to get to that story, but there are so many takeaways in the story you just shared. One, networking, because you clearly impressed your neighbor. And
well, she's like one of my best friends to this day.
Well, I love that. And women supporting women and raising their hand for another young woman that they know. That is incredible. But, I think the other thing that you touched on that so speaks to me is the chicken and the egg thing in our industry is like, well, wait. If you're not going to give me a chance until someone else gives me a chance, then how am I ever going to get a chance? And advocating for yourself and picking up the phone and knocking on the door, because it's not going to open unless you do.
Well, and a big lesson I have is don't take no from someone who doesn't have the power to say yes.
Right.
You can't skip rungs on a ladder.
Yep.
Be careful.
Right.
The other thing is you better know you can deliver if you're going to go that far.
Totally.
You know, and you can't be delusional. You've got to be prepared.
Yep.
Now, in this case, I was actually really naive. I didn't think I could do it. It's only my friend Risa that made me, kept pushing and saying, no, I just know, I know.
And look, she really did know.
And she really did know. And that's another kind of lesson, keep people around you who believe in you as much, if not more, than you do in yourself. That's really important. And shed the people who don't. Mm-hmm. There are some people you can't shed, but there are people you can shed.
Totally.
You don't have obligation to them or duty to them in any way. Why keep them around? You have enough voices in your head. I always talk about the hand over your head. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
I think I learned that in Sedona. When the creativity, right? I think a lot of people, when they have like a really powerful creative moment, I don't think it's uncommon at all for the person to say, I don't even know how it came to me, right? It feels heaven sent. It feels like God. It feels like a gift, right? You didn't think of it somehow. Certain types of creativity are like that. And I think of that, the vessel, like you're like a vessel for the creativity to come to you. And if you have a figurative hand over your head, you're blocking that energy, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know why I thought of that just now, but like to believe
the voices in your head is
we have
hand.
enough voices in our head. We have enough voices in our head, and thank you. And I have that. I put the hand over my head all the time. Mm-hmm. So I don't need anybody to help me with that. Yeah. I got that covered.
Amen. Yes.
I got that covered, right? I need people who are going to push me outside my comfort zone and believe in me and help me achieve things.
Yeah. I'm so glad you did. And I'm so glad for all of us that you had those people surrounding you then. How did you end up booking the job? If that was the first step.
So the story goes, when I walked into said home, that's how the auditions happened. They borrowed somebody's house. It was like a townhome in Philly. And see, this is our connection. So this is so interesting. Banyan Productions was out of Philly, but I was also born in Philly, as were you. And so we are both, I don't mean to sound like too gross or anything, but we're well-known names in Philadelphia. So we were asked to be part of, with other well-known names in Philadelphia, that tree lighting. So that's how we met. We've got Philly roots, you and I.
We do.
So,
and I didn't know that you had your first audition for Trading Spaces in Philly. Mm-hmm. I love that added
They borrowed someone's house. They made interns pretend to be like, homeowners or whatever.
So funny.
And they were holding the auditions upstairs, and it was one of those homes where you walk in and the stairs are like right in front of you, And I walked in, and the executive producer from TLC, not Denise, who was the EP from Banyan Productions, but the EP from TLC, just by coincidence or fate, was at the top of the stairs. And I walked in the front door, and I was kind of looking around where I should go, what I should do. And apparently he said in his mind, if she can talk, she's the one.
Wow.
There was something that told him.
Wow.
And he stuck around, and he hung out downstairs with me for over 3 hours until the end of the auditions. He didn't watch any other girl on tape, woman on tape. And I thought that was strange. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know if he was just like some lascivious guy like hitting on me, or like I didn't know. But he was kind enough, and I enjoyed my conversation with him. And then they were packing up, and he said, wait, we have one more woman down here. And Denise was like, we're already over time, Stephen. We can't. We've got to pack up. He's like, I approve the overtime.
Wow.
She was like, okay. And she was very dubious about it. And then I got up there, and I don't know if I told her, I'm Reese's friend. I think probably I didn't. I think probably I didn't tell her, I'm Reese's friend. But we did the audition, and Ty Pennington was there. They'd brought him in to audition, opposite the gals who were there. I did that later for other like incoming carpenters and other designers and things like that. And after it was over, I sort of had this sense that I had the job. And Ty was like, "Oh my God, you booked it. You've got it. You got it." And I said, "Oh God, I didn't get it." And I didn't. So Jana Bennett, who was that original woman that I called, to her credit, I think she is the only one who actually knew what they were sitting on with Trading Spaces. And she didn't want to hire me because I didn't have any experience. And all the people from Banyan Productions, Denise included, and Steven Schwartz and others, kept pushing her. And she kept saying no, and she refused to hire me, but they refused to agree on anyone else. They auditioned like 50 more women. They couldn't find anybody. In the meantime, Steven Schwartz had me train up to his house in Westchester, made his in-laws pretend to be neighbors, did an entire like callback tape, made Doug Wilson come up and audition opposite me, one of the designers on Trading Spaces who lives in New York City. And he sent in the callback tape, and Jana Bennett said, "I liked the first tape. I agree with you. It was a great audition. She's adorable. But how do I know she can actually handle a whole series?" Like, no. But they just kept pushing.
Wow. My jaw's been on the floor. If you're listening and not watching, I've never heard these stories, and I'm so glad to have the opportunity to hear these. So Jana knew what they were sitting on.
Yeah. I think she was afraid to just give it to anybody.
Right. Which you can, like, we could appreciate that.
Of course.
Did you know?
No.
Did you have any idea what was about to happen?
Any of us knew. We were the little cable show that could, you know. I knew people knew what it was. I knew it had a nice, cult following and everything, but because there had been a previous season that Alex McLeod had hosted, but they were replacing her. So I was the one who replaced her, which didn't go over well at first at all, because the people who were watching were like, it was their show. They'd found it. That cult feeling was like really prominent. And they're like, whoa, you're not our leader. So that didn't go over well on the chat boards. Remember chat boards?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, boy. They were as vicious, if not more vicious, than social media today. But that was the beginning of all of that.
But it exploded. I mean, it really did.
Yeah.
You were everywhere. I mean, I even remember watching your wedding on TLC.
Well, and my wedding is what kind of changed things for the fans, because they got to see me not just as that, that annoying flipped-haired chick who took over Alex's job, but as a real person with a family and with feelings and, dreams and a love. And they got to see me and my, my habitat, as it were. And so they were able to relate to me much more as a person. And so then they started coming around and like, oh, we guess she's okay.
And I still remember one aspect of your wedding, because it always stuck with me, that you had your people that were super important to you line the aisle and create your bouquet as you walked up.
I stole that idea from Lisa Kudrow. I read it in a magazine, and I thought that is the most brilliant idea, because I didn't do like a whole multiple bridesmaid thing. I had a maid of honor, a matron of honor. She was married. I had been her maid of honor. So now, and then my sister was also a bridesmaid. So it was really wonderful to just also include men in that scenario. Like my uncle gave me a rose, and I walked down the aisle and collected the flowers, and that became my bouquet. And then I was able to have my best friend from college, who I'm still extremely close to, she, tied it off with the ribbon. And so she was my bridal bouquet attendant, as it were. And she surprised me by, ahead of time, she attached paper leaves to each of the flowers that I was going to be collecting. And she had them write like a little word or note or short, like brief message on the leaf. So it took me like over 5 minutes to walk down the aisle, because I'm reading all of these messages on, and I got to the front already crying.
Yeah.
Already like we never stopped crying. The whole weekend we never stopped crying.
It was so special that it stuck with me all these years. Like, I just remember that, and I will always remember that. It's really such a special touch.
And we have the best wedding video.
You do.
Like, people like, watch my wedding video. And I'm like, oh my God. Yeah. But my wedding video, soup to nuts, the whole weekend is 20 minutes long. I mean, without commercials.
Yeah.
It's only a half-hour show, a wedding story. So 20 minutes. It's great.
Well, and this, for any younger listeners that didn't know about Trading Spaces, this was before streaming networks. This was before you had options. So you really were, everyone wanted you to come to their home. Everyone wanted you to be in their living room, actually.
Yeah, well, it always astounded me that people actually wanted us to come to their homes. I mean, I would say, careful what you wish for. You do watch the show, right? But yeah, it had that element. Look, Trading Spaces was a hit because so many things came together in a lightning in the bottle situation. And one of those things was that as an ensemble, we were a group of friends. Now, we were, 2 designers at a time and 1 carpenter and a host, but people sort of saw us like, maybe like all stuffed in that Trading Spaces truck, and we just spit out 2 designers at a time, right? But inside it's Mai Tais and like partying, and we're all friends. And that's not actually that far from the truth. We had squabbles, of course, and we had conflict and tension that would happen, but it was all very family related. We were very much like siblings. We were like brothers and sisters. And the tension was fierce and the love was fierce. And we might like go at each other's throats. Like, you can't do that. That's not, like, how can you do that? You're abusing the homeowners, like whatever. But we would never take that out. It never left the set.
Right.
Set, quote unquote set. It was just, you could feel the camaraderie. And it was like the same type of thing that we feel when we watch the TV show Friends. It's like, I want to be in that coffee shop with those friends. I want to be there with them. I want to hang out in Monica's apartment. I want them to be my friends, right? And I think that's how people felt about us.
I know they did. I did. And my mom did. And my mom used to call like her neighborhood friends.
And I love your mom.
Yeah.
I've met your mom too.
The feeling's mutual. Well, tell me about when that chapter came to a close, like how that felt.
There were 2 closes.
Yeah.
3
well, yes,
now.
Because
3 now. The first close was I was fired. It was awful. Absolutely awful. I had signed a contract that would be, it was for 4 years total. So I guess 3 renewals, but 4 seasons, which was unusual. Actually, most standard contracts require 6 seasons. That's very typical, very standard. I don't think they thought it was going to last. Oh, God. Little did any of us know. And things were getting like really crazy. The show was blowing up. And when I initially signed on the dotted line, we were doing 40 episodes a season, which is a lot.
So many.
A lot of travel. I was barely home. And there's, then there's all the commitments to the network, commitments to the production company. I was actually trying to make money because there was no money in that. And there's no residuals. Basic cable they're not under union jurisdiction.
Really?
Oh, yeah. But I was trying to, I did a deal with Kodak. I did a deal with Fifth Third Bank. I did a deal with Enterprise Rent-A-Car. I did a deal with Millstone Coffee.
So you had to diversify.
Oh, absolutely. And so if I had an opportunity where I had a few days off, that was usually, I would go I can go do that job, And I was really trying to capitalize on it as much as I could because I knew it was fleeting. And everything got so big and we were doing so many specials. We went to 60 episodes a season, plus umpteen specials. So we were ending up doing 75 episodes a season. And that's not including any of the travel, not including any of the other obligations. And I quite literally wasn't home ever. And Patrick had said to me, you know, I didn't marry you to never, ever be with you.
Yeah.
And this is crazy. And they were asking me to renew, which would mean 2 more years. So it would be a total of 6. And everyone else in the cast renewed. They all got bumps to like $10,000 an episode. I was still at my I think it was $1,800 an episode. It might have gone up to 21 by that point. And they all got their bumps. Some of it was even retroactive for them. And I just said, look, I can't, everything's changed. You know, I'm on every single one.
Right.
You know, they leapfrogged out and were home all the time. Even the production crews were leapfrogged.
Right.
The producers were leapfrogged. So from city to city, they'd have 3 episodes or more off every other time. And I said, I'm not leaving, you know, before 4 years, but I can't promise you today that 2 years from now, I will stay another 2 years. If you're asking me to promise on the dotted line that in 2 years, I will stay another 2 years, I can't promise that. I may have to just go home when my contract ends. Even if I don't want to.
What did they attribute the contract, your price versus the other prices?
Well, they agreed to stay.
Yeah.
They all agreed to stay, and I didn't. So when they agreed to stay, they got the bump.
Okay.
So
was that carrot being dangled in front of you at that
100%.
time? Okay,
oh,
good.
yeah.
I was like, okay,
I
good.
could have had that also, but I would have loved that, but I just couldn't do that. I couldn't promise. And so I said, I just can't. And then in the meantime, I was also being courted by CBS and King World. Not courted, I had a deal. They were to do a talk show and a sitcom. And TLC was treating it like I wasn't re-signing because of that deal. And I said, that's not it at all. That's not even starting until later. And also, it hadn't been signed yet. Because then TLC did all of this nonsense about, they were telling King World that any talk show I did could not use the word home. There were all these post-exclusivity contractual things that they were insisting on. And King World kept saying, well, can we just do one home segment on Friday? Or can we do we'll promote Trading Spaces like crazy. We'll have your people on. We'll do all this stuff. And they just kept saying no because they kept hoping the deal would fall through, which is exactly what happened. And then they said, oh, that's such a shame. But now that you're available, why don't you sign for the next 2 years? Again, this is additional. This is in 2 years, my contract would be up. And I would have to do another 2 years.
Wow.
And I said, that deal had nothing to do with that. I can't promise you I'll stay. And they were like, oh, well, if you don't need us, we don't need you. And they fired me.
Wow.
Yeah.
How did you
I didn't finish the last half of my last season. I never even finished. And then they went to a hostless format. And I was devastated.
Yeah. How did you
Not for the loss of
that?
the job. I just, this is where you've got to be really careful. Friendships and business relationships are different. Business relationships can be friendly and they can be enjoyable, but they are not friendships. And I felt stabbed in the back by my friends. I showed up to every single thing the network asked me to do. I never complained. I gave 1,000% of myself to every single thing they asked me to do. And for that, I just got tossed aside like trash.
And lost out on, I would have loved to see a Paige Davis sitcom,
Well, that was King World and
yeah,
CBS.
but you lost out on that
I lost out on that
opportunity.
job. Now, eventually, I did get that back.
Yeah.
But it was so late. by that point, my skillet had cooled, so to speak, and we had to wait out the post-exclusivity obligations. And the person who had championed me all along, the one who'd really pushed for that contract in the first place, had left for personal reasons. He'd moved to Chicago to be with his husband and sabbatical and whatever. And so I didn't have a champion there anymore. And I wasn't somebody's person anymore. Yeah. So I just sort of floundered and nothing ever came of it.
How did you process that emotionally? Because I have to imagine that was devastating, right? The betrayal,
I was
but also
just genuinely hurt.
Yeah.
I mean, I did end up signing that deal with King World, and Patrick's like, "You're getting paid more than you've ever been paid to sit on your ass." I'm like, "Yeah, that's not what I want."
Right.
I had a fan. I still have a fan. Her name is Jessica Torres, and she actually has the right to claim number one fan for reals. And she sent me a book she'd printed on postcards and then made it into a book. Oh, it must have been over near 1,000, hundreds of quotes from the chat boards of people who were like, "We miss Paige, we love Paige," all these things. I mean, just it was the complete opposite. I mean, talk about a 180 from where I started. And I held that book. I slept with it a couple of nights. And it just meant so much to me to be reminded that I'd had an impact and that people enjoyed the work that I did and that I did a good job and that I wasn't fired for cause, so to speak. You know what I mean? And that I was appreciated by the people who watched the show. And then the real vindication came when the whole network kind of tanked there for a while. And people were like, "Well, we're boycotting TLC." And of course, people didn't boycott TLC. But ratings for other shows did go down.
Yeah, I imagine.
There was a little bit of a revolt, which I was like, this is amazing. And that felt kind of good. And actually, a lot of people got fired. And I was like, I know this isn't directly related to me, but a lot of this is kind of indirectly related to me.
Wow.
And it was people weren't supposed to talk to me. They were forbidden to talk to me, but some people would call on the sly and tell me "You would not believe what's going down here." And then new people came in because those other people had been fired. And they were like, "The first thing we want to do is reverse that decision. You're coming back. We're bringing it back." And that ended up being a quagmire. It was like trading spaces like New Coke. It was it didn't work. They said we were going to do the old format, and they really didn't. And so that all fell apart, but whatever. So that was my second close, was the quagmire of the season we don't name. And then we actually got brought back.
Yes.
In 2018.
Not too long ago.
Whole series of reboots. It became the fashion there for a while to reboot all these shows. And we were one of them. So that was really exciting.
It was exciting for me as well. And
we went 2 seasons. That's pretty great, actually. But
especially nowadays.
But then, everybody was so excited, but nobody watched.
Yeah. It's such a different landscape now.
Yeah, I mean, there's literally how many networks and streaming platforms can you choose from? And we just didn't have the ratings to sustain it. But it was really exciting to all be back together, and we were all back together, which was so great. And it was wonderful. It's just like the old days, really, for real.
Yeah.
Not the New Coke one.
Right.
But
right.
For real.
Well, that must have been so soul filling.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would love to know, I think creatives always live at this what's next, right? Because there is an instability to the job. And
I would like to say, for the record, before we go on, TLC treated me very well when I came back for that reboot.
Good.
They were wonderful. They really listened to me, and I don't know how much they cared or didn't care, but in terms of they displayed to me that they valued me as a talent. Good. They displayed to me that they valued I had gone through something. Look, it's business, but they valued that I'd been hurt. Even if they were faking it, I appreciated it. And, they paid me what everybody else was making. And it was nice, so for 2 seasons, that was great. And I did feel appreciated. And I certainly don't mean to like dog TLC or anything like that. That regime that was in place when all that went down then was not great.
Right.
And I don't have fond memories of that year. Mm-hmm. But how they are now is fine. And I love everybody there.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate how they respected that past.
Well, I love to hear that. I think it's really hard. Like you said, business isn't friendship. And I think it's even harder when your business feels personal because you're a personality. And like as much as you can say, well, this is my job and this is Paige Davis, the TV host, it's still Paige Davis at the end of the day.
Not a character.
Yeah. And so it is really hard to separate those, and not take things personally. And I think a lot of people probably can identify with that. Mm-hmm. And I have to imagine that there may have been moments for you where you were thinking like, what is next? Like, what's next for me after this? Mm-hmm. What did you do in those moments and how did you shift?
It was difficult. I have to really take a tremendous amount of accountability for not shifting with the times. Like, when I was coming up and Trading Spaces was happening and all of that, even Broadway shows and everything else, I went back to theater. I did a lot of regional theater, was really trying to continue to do television. I did do a few more shows. I did Homemade Simple for OWN, which I was nominated for an Emmy for, which was really exciting. I did Home and Family for the Hallmark Network. TLC, we ended up Discovery Networks and Scripps Networks blended. So now Food Network and TLC were sister networks. So I got to host the Holiday Gingerbread Challenge, which I totally was living out my great British baking show dreams doing that. I hosted their toilet paper wedding dress challenge, which is still I think one of my favorite jobs I've ever had. So I was doing a lot of that and just kind of trying to get whatever the next gig was. And I think I also thought, I'm embarrassed to say this. I don't think this is a good thing, but I'm being honest when I say I didn't think it should be so hard. I felt like I'd made a name for myself. I felt like I should be getting some offers. And I wasn't. But I also wasn't shifting to the new reality, which is you have to not only have an idea, you have to shoot it in order to pitch it. You have to be extremely proactive. And there are so many people with podcasts, with YouTube shows, with, all these things. And I was really getting left in the dust. Even on social media, I just wasn't keeping up. And I tried hiring a social media manager, got my website up and going, started doing a blog. And I'm like, why is this not taking off? Why is this not taking off? But by the time all of the Trading Spaces hoopla had ended, everything had changed. And all of us Gen Xers were all on Facebook and everything's happening on Instagram. And I'm like, oh my God, it just was so overwhelming and so taxing. And I just thought, oh my God, I've just been doing this for too many decades. I can't chase this anymore. And a unique circumstance in the sense that it's a career that you have to shift and learn and stay on trend. And it is exhausting. And I think I understand why you were thinking, well, for sure, offers are going to come, right? Because you were everywhere. I mean, you were. Well, and people blow so much smoke too.
Yes.
You created what hosting is. And I grew up watching your show and you were the best of the best. And you were okay, thank you for the compliment. And,
right.
And then, talk about voices, I'm not being self-deprecating when I say I'm not the quick wit. I'm not the, hosts started becoming either comedians which God bless him, like Howie Mandel, amazing host. He's spectacular. Or people who are just naturally hilarious. I'm not that kind of host. Or hosts were the ones who were the experts themselves. So, obviously Dr. Phil, Oprah launched a bunch of people, right? Dr. Oz, Dr. Phil. But these were people who, regardless of what you think of them, they are known as experts in their field. I was the conduit between the expert and the layperson at home, or literally at home, in their home, the homeowner and the designer, or what's happening, with the designers and the people watching at home. So I was always a conduit, and I kept going into all these production companies for, meet and greets, and I would explain to them that I'm a conduit. And I was thinking this was such a great thing. It's not. It's not. And I didn't really know what to offer. And so I started thinking like jobs that I would see would come up that maybe I'd audition for. I would go in with the mentality of, well, somebody else can do this better than me. And you start putting that out into the universe, and that's what you get. Right. That's what you get back.
Yeah. I mean, we all have those voices in our head, and it's a good reminder to not listen to them.
Yeah.
But you are an expert at...
In what?
I've seen you on Broadway.
Well, that's the other thing. I'm not even the best dancer or the best singer or the best actress. I'm sort of fair to Midland in all three. And so it comes together in a great way sometimes. And if, Roxy was a great part for me. Charity and Sweet Charity was a great part for me. So and the roles I've played have been really great. And then there's roles I played that I probably had no business playing, but I did my best regionally, now not on Broadway. But I got to play Mame. Now I'm actually older than Angela Lansbury was when she played the role. But
you wouldn't know.
I'm very cutesy. First of all, when I played it, I think that was 3 years ago, 2 years, no. Oh, that was so long ago. Oh my God, I'm 54 really? Now. I think I was 48 when I played it. I was older than Angela Lansbury was when she played it, but Angela Lansbury has a gravitas about her, right? My voice doesn't have that. My round cheeks don't have that. My perky personality doesn't have that. I'm just not that. But they wanted their Mame to dance, and I'm not going to say no. I'm like, you're letting me play. I'm going to play the role. I got to play Dolly. No one would think of me as old enough to play Dolly.
Yeah. No.
But I'm like, if someone's going to tell me I can play it, they're going to let me play it. I'm going to show up. I don't care.
And you are so, you are so much fun to watch, I have to say. We've been to dance class together, and sometimes I'm like, I just want to watch Paige. I don't want to dance. I just want to watch Paige dance.
Well, I do love to dance. I can't dance anymore. Not really. There's just too many injuries. So even with Chicago, I would love to go back into Chicago.
Yeah.
And I think that Fran and Barry Weissler, who are the producers, I think if I asked to have another stint, because I went in and out so many times.
What was it like when you first got the call for the first time?
Well,
or how did you?
The very first time I did Chicago, I was in the ensemble. And I just auditioned like anybody else.
Yeah.
And I booked it. And it was a very full circle moment for me, because the first show that I saw on Broadway, I was 10 years old, and I saw a chorus line. And I fell in love with the dancers, of course, and I wanted to watch them as they came out of the stage door. And I made my parents stand there and wait. I didn't need to meet them necessarily, but I just wanted to watch them. And they'd come out and be like, oh, there's one. And a chorus line was at the Schubert Theater. And the Schubert Theater has a brass stage door. It's metal, and it's gold. It looks gold, but at 10 years old, I thought it was gold. I thought, oh my God, of course a Broadway stage door would be gold. And I thought, one day I'm going to walk through that gold stage door. And I would think Schubert Alley, Schubert Theater is right there in Schubert Alley. The Booth Theater is right there in Schubert Alley. It too has a gold stage door. And every time I would visit New York, I'd go through Schubert Alley and I'd look at that door and think, one day I'm going to walk through that gold stage door. And my Broadway debut was in Chicago when they were still at the Schubert Theater. And I arrived at rehearsal and I walked through not just the figurative, but the literal gold stage door I'd stared at my whole life.
Oh, I just got chills.
I was bawling when I got to rehearsal. They thought it was crazy. And I was like, what have we got on our hands with this one? Yeah, that was insane. And then eventually they moved to the Ambassador. So now they're at the Ambassador Theater. But.
And did you get that call after Trading Spaces to play Roxy?
Yes. Well, I covered Roxy.
Oh.
And
that first run.
Yeah. Well, the first thing I did was the national tour. And the national tour ended up sitting down in Vegas. So we opened the Mandalay Bay Hotel, did a stint there. And then I left at that point. I was there for about 8 months, I think, in Vegas. Did Chicago. Well, I started in Chicago. And when we were on tour with Beauty and the Beast, when Patrick and I were on tour with Beauty and the Beast, Chicago was there in Chicago. And we were saying how, wouldn't it be neat one day you'll be in Chicago? And then my first city was Chicago. And Patrick's opening night flowers said, remember when we were in Chicago thinking how cool it would be if you were in Chicago? And now you're in Chicago, I was like, oh my God. So then we went to Toronto and then Vegas. And I left after Vegas because we were there so long. And I went into the Broadway company then. And yeah, I covered Roxy that whole time and then got to go on a few times. And then after Trading Spaces, they were like, do you want to come back and play Roxy? And I was like, I sure as hell do.
Yes. And you were so fabulous as Roxy. I still remember that night getting to see you.
It was fun. And I've gotten to go back in so many times. I mean, I've been in and out of that show since 1998.
So it's so
crazy.
fab.
Just crazy.
It is crazy. It's wild. You were talking about your husband, Patrick. You're both creatives.
Well, I don't consider myself a creative. We just had this conversation the other day.
Do tell. Okay.
And our friend's son actually really coined it exactly how I feel. He said, I don't consider myself a creative. I enjoy being creative sometimes. I have experienced being creative, but I don't consider myself a creative. I don't have the urge to create something. I'm much more of a great foot soldier. I feel comfortable bringing myself to a project. I feel comfortable creating around somebody else's idea, their boundaries, their setup or whatever. I like brainstorming with people, but no, it's kept me from being a dance teacher. I would love to teach. I love to teach, but you got to make up a combination all the time.
Interesting.
So I'm like, what am I going to do?
I appreciate that perspective. Does Patrick consider himself?
Yes.
Okay.
100%.
Because he
Oh my God. He writes. He constantly
those
creating.
Listening, why don't you share who your husband is?
Patrick Paige, not to be confused. His last name does not have an I. I'm Paige. He is Page. Everyone calls me Paige. That's why that's my email address. And he's, we met doing the first national tour of Beauty and the Beast. And that was in 1995. And we've been together ever since. And he's a well-known Broadway performer. Most notably and most recently, he was the original Hades in Hadestown. He was finally nominated for a Tony. He should have been nominated long ago for a million other things, but he finally got that nomination, which was exciting. And the other really recent things, he's in Gilded Age.
Yes.
As is everyone on Broadway except me. No, I'm just kidding. It's great. It's so great. It's like Telsey casts that, and Telsey casts so much Broadway. And it's like Telsey got the HBO job and was like to all the Broadway people he loves so much. Yeah, it's like, you get a job and you get a job. It's just so exciting. And so he plays Clay on that. He's Morgan Spector's sort of right-hand man.
He's so good in that.
I love that show. I'm really, the second season I thought was even better than the first. And the other real recent thing he's got going was the movie Spirited that's on Apple with Will Ferrell and Ryan Reynolds. And he has a really big part. And we were watching with family and people were like, oh my God, Patrick has this really big part. It's like he's like the next lead. Like, yeah, we told you it was a big part. What did you think? And he had a blast shooting that, an absolute blast.
Looked
Will
like
Ferrell and Ryan Reynolds were both like
hysterical.
They were amazing people, just absolutely amazing people.
That's good to hear.
Who show up, do the work, don't take things for granted, never acted entitled.
Wow.
Worked as hard, if not harder, than everybody else, and were shining examples of professionalism on set.
Wow.
He didn't get to work with, I'm blanking her name right now, the woman who ends up playing the love interest to Will Ferrell.
I'm blanking too.
She's wonderful. She's a Black actress.
Yeah, I know exactly.
Oh, gosh.
We can put it in the show notes.
I'm blanking.
I am
it's
too.
terrible, but he never got to work with her, so he didn't really get to meet her. But
Will and Ryan are.
Oh, God.
That's so nice to hear.
Oh, my God. I got to meet Will Ferrell.
You did?
Okay. Here we go now. So, first I met Tina Fey. She showed up. We traded spaces in Manhattan.
Okay.
On the Upper West Side. And which was a nightmare, by the way. It's so much. Why do we always do McMansions in the suburbs? Because it's easier.
Right.
That's why. There's a place to put the truck. Trading spaces in Manhattan was an absolute nightmare. But anyway, the truck was parked out on the street on 86th Street. And Tina Fey was there on the sidewalk when we arrived at like 7 a.m. And she's like, I've been waiting for you to get here. I'm the biggest fan of Trading Spaces. She couldn't believe she was meeting Frank. She was so ecstatic. She's like, what designers are here? Oh my God. I was like, are you kidding me right now? And then when I met Will Ferrell, he talked to me for 90 minutes about Trading Spaces. He knew every episode. He knew every designer. He knew everything about everything. And I'm sitting there the whole time like inside my head, I'm going like, stay cool. Like, keep calm. Do not make a big deal out of this. Do not freak out. And then we finally stopped talking. I'm like texting everyone I know, like, oh my God, Will Ferrell loved Trading Spaces.
Oh, that's how massive it was. I'm glad you told that story because it's hard to encapsulate for anyone who didn't witness the phenomena that it was.
Yeah.
I mean, it really was.
Yeah, for like 2 years, it was like, it was huge.
Everywhere. I also want to talk because I know personally how just good of a soul and person you are and how important nonprofit work is to you. Yeah. And I've seen all the work you do with Volunteers of America.
Yes, Volunteers of America, to clarify immediately, is not a volunteer organization. I happen to volunteer for it, but we're a social services organization with a mission now to end homelessness in the New York tri-state area by, or the 5 boroughs anyway, by 2050. Wow. And we run a lot of the shelters in the city. We run domestic violence shelters, veteran shelters, shelters for families, transition housing, some permanent housing. And the goal is to give people a helping hand and a step up to transition them back into being productive, creative members of their community and society and to be able to stand on their own. I've been associated with them for 20 years at least, and I've been on the board over 15 years. And one of our more prominent programs is Operation Backpack. If you're in New York City, you might have seen like billboards and bus ads and whatnot for Operation Backpack. It's a school supply drive, and we supply brand new, grade-specific school supplies in brand new, high-quality backpacks to all of the children, the school-age children who are in our shelter system in the 5 boroughs. And that is a lot. It's upward of 20,000. That's just school-age kids. That doesn't count our babies and our toddlers. But from pre-K to 12th grade, we supply grade-specific. Anything the public school system has on their list that the grade needs, it's in the backpack.
Yeah, it's such incredible work that you do. And I've loved watching you soar with that work. I've seen you in the taxi cab.
Yeah, the PSA and the taxi
They tap
cab.
into your hosting abilities.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's why, actually one of the hardest things about my skillet not being as hot anymore is that, I want so much to be able, because I don't feel creative and I don't feel like, they want me to raise all this money. And I'm like, dude, I know poor dancers. That's my Rolodex is poor dancers. And people I do know who have more of a name and more clout. They have their own pet projects. Like you have cystic fibrosis. I know Tom Bergeron. He's a really good friend. He's got his own thing. Wayne Brady's got his own thing. These are people who I do consider friends, but they can't just take on everybody's, just as I can't. So it's just really difficult. I wish that I had more clout again. I wish my name and face was enough of a draw to be the host of the gala each year. We've got Willie Geist. He's amazing. Oh my God. He's donated his time, I think, at least 5 years now. And he's just terrific. And he's been a wonderful.
He was there the year you took me.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. You've gone with me at least twice.
Yeah.
We were always looking for dates for you. We're like, oh, that guy looks single. Let's go meet him. And then we saw the one guy who was like so awesome, and then we lost him.
We did.
But now you have your own guy.
Yep.
Yay.
No, we don't need that anymore.
We don't need that anymore. But we were always on the lookout. I was always trying to be your matchmaker, like
on the hunt.
On the hunt.
You mentioned, your skillet not being hot anymore. What advice would you give to young men and women that are looking to get their skillet hot and, find their way into the world that you so beautifully did navigate?
Be flexible. Be flexible. Be able to transition into what's new. I probably should, I've been trying to do reels.
Yeah.
Reels are even over now. They're not, I'm just barely figuring it out. It'll take me 2 hours to do one, and I'm not exaggerating.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God. And I don't know how people do it so quickly, but to be able to keep up, change, shift, learn new skills. I'm still stuck in this old mindset of I'll just audition for things. And that still happens. Of course, that still happens. And I still do. I still audition for things. But you've got to be able to generate your own work. And the best way to do that is to keep up with what's new and be able to do it. Do as I say, not as I do.
Valuable advice. I'm so glad that we got to have this conversation, Paige, because I learned so much that I didn't know about you and your journey and just how resilient you have been. And, there's a real through line in all the episodes we've done so far of survivorship, of just continuing to show up, and certainly present in your story. And I'm so grateful to know you. So thank you for joining me.
And now we go have coffee and have the real conversation.
The tea. It's true. Love it. Awesome. If you are loving these conversations, please share with a friend
some of those
or
stories.
5.
Crazy.
And leave me a review because I would love to hear your feedback.
That's why I
and if you have an idea for a future guest,
I would have never found those
head on
stories
over
when I
to
did
our
my
Instagram
at
@DeeperLookPod and comment who you'd like to get to know on a deeper look.
To now, but
new episodes drop every Wednesday.
Yeah.
I'll see you next week.
We didn't even get into any of we didn't get into alcohol.
I know. There were questions I had for you, but I was like, this was so good with Trading Spaces that I was just like, oh, we'll just stay here. Maybe we'll do a follow-up episode.
That'd be great. But yeah, I think especially if what you're dealing with is multi-hyphenate and career and
shifting and trajectories and never knowing what is going to be the thing. That's we have Patrick helped me develop 8 rules of success because I was asked to do this speech. And I was going to say, are you with a speakers bureau?
No.
You should be.
I've been teaching speakers. I've been volunteering for this organization called Our Place that deals with young adults. They have kids and they have teenagers and they have up to 20 some odd year olds and who have addiction issues. And they've been wanting to have someone come in and teach them how to do a speech, not a share
Mhm.
like you would do in an AA meeting or something like that. They all know how to do that. But what is it like? What's your TED Talk?
Right.
So they can represent the
It's
organization.
It sounds like Toastmasters. Did you ever hear of Toastmasters?
No.
So my mother, when we were diagnosed with CF, worked at Procter & Gamble. She was in business, got her master's in business. And then when we got diagnosed with CF, she was outraged by a lot in the healthcare system and started going to Toastmasters to learn how to speak as a patient advocate for her children. And it's sounding like that. But
this I just pull out of my ass. We call it the Speakers Bureau.
But you should be speaking. You should develop speeches. Okay, we're going to talk about this at coffee.
I do like to write.
You should develop. Yeah, let's talk about this because I'm actually pursuing a speakers bureau right now. So I could even put you in touch with, I know the head of the National Speakers Bureau in Washington, D.C. He was like the first one to.
I mean, I would like that.
I would put you in touch with Harry Rhodes, and he manages every, Coach K is like on there, but they have a huge roster. And you, as the former host of Trading Spaces and talking about what we just talked about, and even talking about your lessons learned of not shifting, not in a business forum would be so valuable to corporations.
Very much so.
Yeah.
And we did those the 8 rules of success. We based
That's a keynote
on
right there.
What the whole Trading Spaces experience.
Yeah, that's a keynote. Great. I have your next thing that you're going to do now.
And can you just sort of do the same one over and over and over?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. The things that you need are like, but you have all the things that you're going to need. You're going to have to put a reel together of you, first of all, hosting, but you're already, because you're a former host of Trading Spaces, a name that they will be able to pop up on. I can't believe you're not on a speakers bureau.
I would love that.
Oh, I am so serious. You need to be doing this.
Okay.
Yeah.
That'd be great. I mean, I really need to make money.
Yeah.
I need to work.
People will fly you.
Luckily, Patrick's been working, but.
Oh, they'll fly you. Yeah, let's go get coffee.
Okay.
And get out of the hot lights. I'm pretty sure we did the whole. Yeah, we did. We did the whole hour. Okay. Because we're about to. Okay, great.
Oh my God. Oh. I'm sweating like a crazy person.
Yes, I can. Okay. Sorry, my publicist for my nonprofit is asking for photos. So I am totally like, you need to be doing this. I'm going to tell my mom. She's going to be like, yeah.
I would love that. I mean, I already have the basis of a speech.
Yeah.
I could just update it.
And you'll start at you might even start a 10K speech. And they'll fly you out and you'll.
Amazing.
And it will just fill your cup.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It'll build confidence again.
Yeah.
And
I'm so jazzed about that idea. Like sitting there, I'm like, oh my gosh, you have all of these nuggets of wisdom and experience that can so easily be applied to businesses and corporations. Yeah.
I need I was thinking of a whole other speech. We ran into people in the airport that I think Patrick knew. Maybe I was supposed to know. They knew us. And what's Patrick doing? And like, what are you up to, Paige? And I sort of made a joke about he affords me the opportunity to volunteer.
Yeah.
But I do so much. I am so